Hello, everybody. It's Graham Coath with My Music. Good way to start your week, isn't it? It's a Monday afternoon, and already I've got a guest. So in a minute, I'll be speaking to Johan from Pennies by the Pound. But first, this.
I need to get going, mate. I'll see you later.
There you go, Johan. You've probably seen lots of stuff like that all day. People working on computers, because you say that in your spare time, as it were, you work for IT support.
Yeah, I do. It's not something I'm too keen on discussing about because it's a terrible job.
It's a wonderful profession. So. Well, anyway,
I try to help people.
That's what it's really about. It's about helping people. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about you and your music, and in particular, Pennies by the Pound, which is your group, and we're coming to that in a minute. But what I want to know, because this is what I always want to know from people, is where did music all start with for you? Were you into music from a very young age? Was there an influence in the family?
Yes, I come from a very musical family. I have two sisters, and my parents. One of my sisters actually studied to be a concert pianist and things like that. And I was subjected to music from a very early age. Like I had to play the violin and piano and things like that, classical music. I'm not so sure even to this day if I really enjoyed it at that time. but in the end, it turned out then that when I was old enough to get my courage up and tell my parents that screw the violin, I'm going to play the drums. And then everything turned out a bit better for me, at least. That was somewhere in the US they call it junior high. I don't know exactly what it's in England, but yeah.
So what age were you?
I was 12, maybe 12, okay. 13, something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe even 11. I can't remember. I can't remember for sure. But then I continued with the drums, and on and off. I played in some local bands. They'd never amounted to much anything, but just as those kinds of kids do, you get some friends to get together, and then you have a band, and then you have some couple of songs, and try to play a show, and it never gets anywhere. But from that time on and off, I have been playing somewhere, at least. At some point at the turn of the millennium, I did some electronic music in Finland. I didn't really play the drums or play the bass. I started up bass somewhere in high school, and I didn't really do any of those things. But then later on, I think in 2006 or 7 or something, I got in touch with actually the current lead guitarist of Pennies by the Pound, Vesa, who had a band at that time. And then that was the first time for me in a long time that I was playing in a band. And I joined that band, and then we kind of got on. And that band has been long since disbanded, and things have happened after that. But yeah, I've had a life full of music. On and off bands, on and off whatever, but yeah.
So what turned you on to drums? Who was it turned you on to drums?
That's a very difficult question, because I've thought about that myself, but I can't really know. I can't really say. It might have been Alex Van Halen, actually. because Van Halen is one of the earliest bands, or then Roger Taylor of Queen, because those two are the earliest bands I kind of remember really like digging, like really like being into. And then of course there was something else, like all those late 80s like hard rock heavy bands, Guns N' Roses and things like that. And then well, I think it must lie somewhere there, because after that, then again, I remember that U2 was the first band where I really kind of thought that, okay, this is the band, I need to have all the albums, I need to know everything about this whole thing, I need to like get into everything that they've got. And
did you like Larry Mullen Jr.'s drumming?
I've later realized that I did. At that time, I mostly liked like the Edge's guitar playing, and I couldn't play the guitar myself at that time at all. So I was kind of like, yeah, this is so cool. This sounds so like so much like something that no other band does, basically, at that time.
It's very expansive,
and,
isn't it?
Early 90s. Yeah. And then when, let's say when Achtung Baby came out in 91, which turns out is a very, very, very seminal music year for me anyway, in many sorts of things. Then I was just like, okay, U2 is the best band in the world, and that's it. But then all sorts of other things happened during 91 as well. So it's it's I was born in 1980, so the early 90s are my kind of like definite music thing. As much as I love 70s, 80s rock and all that, but that's still
He certainly, I mean, in terms of production, the drums on, you mentioned Achtung Baby, but that in terms of production, the drums went up a notch on that particular album. I mean, Larry,
did.
You know, that kind of
and I remember
boom.
I remember reading in a book, I think it might be in the book U2 by U2 or something, where they were speaking themselves like about their career, and I remember Larry Mullen speaking about that up until, I can't remember if it was the Joshua Tree or I think it was the Joshua Tree. Up until that, he kind of didn't really know anything about drumming, in the sense that he was just like self-learned and all that. And then before the Joshua Tree, I might be wrong on the album, but anyway, somewhere around that time or that point, he like took to himself to take some drumming lessons and see if there's something to like improve on his whatever he was doing. And I think you can hear it. I think you can definitely hear it, especially like on Achtung Baby.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And as I say, you know, the production on that album and the producers that worked on that album really kind of brought the drums to life as well. It has that kind of real,
for sure,
you know, heavy sound.
And you have all that. You have all the samples, and you have like all those kinds of like mixing. I love the idea of which some of the other artists I love have used quite a lot. The idea of like live drums and then mixing like samples or like drum machines or something with that. So that's a very
well. We were talking just before we came on because we both love Marillion. And I've made no bones about it. But of course, Ian Mosley in recent times has used samples quite a lot and has drummed along to over the top of samples, in particular on songs. So is that something that you've incorporated into your own music at all, or is everything just...
that on this record, we didn't do any of that. We edited the drums a bit, but the producer Rake, he's kind of keen on doing all sorts of technical things with things, and but we didn't use any of that kind of trickery. But it's something that I'm very keen on exploring. Let's say maybe on the next record, maybe it's something that I've always wanted to do, but. Maybe these songs weren't particularly open for that kind of thing, but maybe later. I at least want to do that.
Yeah. What's your great ambition in terms of a musical project? I mean, that I'm going to stick with Marillion for a minute. Their last album, they worked with an orchestra. Would you ever like to work with an orchestra, say?
I would love to work with an like maybe not a huge orchestra, but like a string ensemble or something like that. I would really. There's a song on our album, our record, the last song called "Heat Death," where there's a lot of like synthesized strings and all that. And I and the producer, we both made kind of the arrangement for that. So that would be interesting to work with the live real string and ensemble.
Yeah,
apart from that, actually, apart from that, actually, not too much. I'm trying to make a real concept album. Probably, maybe the next thing that I'll do, but that's I don't know how that will turn out. I mean, it's a big thing to try to do that kind of thing.
So the album's called "Heat Death of the Universe." That's quite a title.
Yes. It's kind of. I thought it would be a bit over the top. It's about. It's about. Well, in my mind, it could be about anything, but if you ask me, it's about. I've always had this. Well, not always, but for at least 20 years. Since I was like a 20-something-year-old, I've had this idea about, I don't know where it came from, but I had some friends who studied lots of physics and who did all sorts of like science stuff. And we talked about a lot of those things. And I had this idea at that time about like the whole of society being this kind of thing which you could compare to like some molecules or atoms or things like that, that people work in a weird way, in the same way that they attract each other and they get pushed off each other, and then it's quite random, or not random, but it's quite, if you look at it from some other level, then you could see some patterns there and things like that. And then the Heat Death of the Universe is basically applying the same idea to society in the way that social media and all that, well, not talking about the pandemic or anything, but like before that, and social media and the internet in general is kind of pushing people away from each other. They're not seeing each other like in person. They're not there. It's more difficult to communicate. Everybody's shouting all the time. It's all this, like, people are actually getting sick of other people because of the internet. That's kind of the lack of real social relations, the eventual lack of, is kind of the heat death of the universe for me, in the sense that, same sense as if people are atoms or molecules or something, they get pushed away. Well, and if you know what the heat death of the universe means, I mean, if you're aware of the concept, So that's kind of that's it's a bit of a grandiose statement, I know, but
well, no, I think it's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for me, especially as someone that's works with social media all day long. I think, but I think it's important. I think it's one of my key things with social media. I think you have to find ways even within social media, of trying to bring people back together, as opposed to
I totally
pulling
agree.
people apart.
That's how I spend a lot of my time in social media, obviously, but I've tried to minimize actually taking part in any kind of conversations there, because it all turns out to be rubbish in the end. It gets to this weird point every single time where everybody's like, screw you, and this is terrible, and everybody's gonna die and all that. I try to distance myself from that.
I think that's quite sensible. I think different platforms are slightly different, and you have to kind of look at which platforms suit you. But ultimately,
Sure,
I think what we need to do as society is, yes, get back to communicating properly with each other. But when we are on social media, I think we need to actually make it count. I think we need to make it use it
I agree
constructively.
totally. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
if you take the time to put something there, then you'd better try to make it worthwhile to, like everybody else who's doing something with it.
Absolutely.
I agree totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of this incarnation of the band, how did you all meet?
That's a short story in a way, because this whole thing started as a wholly solo project in 2015, maybe even that early, or 14. I can't really remember when I got the idea that I played in bands and I still do and all that, but I got the idea that I need to have my own creative control over some things, and then I decided to do a solo record, but then it's quickly turned out that I can't do that. Well, I don't have the skills, so I recruited my old bandmate Vesa, who's the lead guitarist for our band, Vesa Ranta. And he hadn't been playing for a while, but he was quite keen to come abroad. So that was that. And then I played in. It's on break, the whole band. I played in a Finnish punk rock band called AOM for 10 years, but a bit more. We toured quite heavily and we did all sorts of things. And the bass player from that band originally, Tommy. Then I kind of recruited him to this band as well. So old playing mates.
Old playing mates getting back together. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Now you were telling me, and this is interesting. You're telling me that apart from bands like Marillion, Rush, Genesis, etc., the typical prog rock bands that a lot of us got into, bought the t-shirts of, etc., you're also quite into some Finnish bands, and there's been a sort of movement within these bands as well, Finnish prog bands, and there's been a movement for them not to sing anything in English. So who are the best Finnish prog rock bands? Who should we be listening to?
Well, the absolute best of the best is See It. Yeah, obviously. There's two. One of them sings in English and one of them sings in Finnish. But my biggest influence and the band that our producer has produced like a lot of #1 records in Finland and all that is called CMX. And they've done like 17, 18 albums or something. They started in 85 or something like that. Yeah. And they weren't always prog rock. They started up as like a hardcore punk band, which is kind of weird. And then they moved on to like alternative rock and but nowadays, I think since the turn of the millennium, maybe they've been more or less progressive prog rock. And that's where I kind of got my producer from as well, because I've always admired their sound and what they've done, and that Rake, our producer, has done at least like 6 or 7 records for them. I can't remember off the top of my head how many, but anyway. And the English singing Finnish prog band is Von Herton Brothers, who have been actually touring in Britain as well. Yep. Like they're somewhat known there. I think they've been even like, well, not maybe headlining anything, but they've been like on some quite good positions playing festivals and things like that.
Yeah, well, they've had quite a lot of coverage in prog rock magazine.
Yeah. Well. But that's another influence, clearly. But that's a newer band. I mean, I've been listening to CMX since I was a kid, basically. But then again, but there's some others. There's well, no point in naming many of them. But CMX, if you like, kind of check the later CMX things if you like. Quite complicated progressive rock. It's very entertaining.
I will.
It's quite
I'm
heavy,
gonna,
but it's not metal. But yeah.
Yeah. So what? More Dream Theater-ish.
No. I'd say they're kind of the Finnish version of Rush, maybe in a weird way.
Oh, right. Okay. Fine. There you go. So
like, yeah.
Every band that you've mentioned so far has been fairly cool. Okay, but most people have some.
Marillion is it's.
Hey, come on, Marillion. Marillion, I think, went through a period where Marillion were not cool in the slightest. I think Marillion I think they've kind of turned the corner on that now over the last few years. Yeah, absolutely. There was a time when if you said you were a Marillion fan, there were jokes about it. But in terms of kind of guilty pleasure, is there something music wise from sort of pop or that kind of genre that you've liked over the years, but you wouldn't necessarily say was an influence
anymore that much? I have to say not really that much. I'm trying to look at my records here. I'm thinking. Obviously, there's been like crap records that I've bought over the years, but like
there's no Britney Spears in there or anything. No, nothing.
No,
like that.
There's quite a lot of like synth pop. I don't know if that's cool or not. I like Erasure and things like that. So
okay, that's cool.
So
yeah.
So and I'm a huge fan of Pet Shop Boys and. That kind of like 80s style synth pop is that's a big thing. It used to be kind of cringy at some point, like if you would tell people that I listen to heavy metal and I listen to Pet Shop Boys, that would be really like no. but I don't know nowadays. It's not.
Yeah, I think people are far more accepting of that.
Yeah,
and actually, some of those bands. I mean, the Pet Shop Boys, for example, I think. Lyrically, they wrote some really great lyrics. They wrote. I mean,
the lyrics are really important for me. They're like 50% of the music. I mean, it's got to be good. Otherwise, I won't listen to it. Basically.
Did you write all the lyrics on this album?
Yeah. I've been writing actually. I wrote quite a lot of lyrics for the previous bands I was in as well, in English. So that's something that's not as new to me actually as the whole songwriting, because I started writing all the songs by myself only with this band. So
yeah, and the cover that's something else we should talk about. The cover of the album. Yeah, who did that?
That's a collaboration between actually me and my old long time friend Pekka Halonen from Finland, from my birth town of Joensuu. That's he was supposed to do. He did the cover of my our previous record, the EP, and that's quite brilliant, even if I say so. And he's a painter, but he's got some wacky ideas. And he was supposed to do the whole cover. He had this idea of like spray painting space and things, and then some drawings of his own. And the problem was that where he's living at, he couldn't get any spray paints, like proper spray paints for like doing artwork. And then I bought them, and I thought that I'll just mail them to him. And obviously that was not possible because you can't mail spray paints. At least not in Finland. They're hazardous materials and things like that. So
yeah, I think that's hazardous around the world. Yeah.
yeah, and it would have cost an arm and a leg to do that. So I kind of like then told him that, because I've been doing stuff with him for like 30 years, and I kind of told him that, okay, you have this idea, so I'll do the spray painting and you do the other stuff. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. So it's kind of a collaboration.
Clever. So actually, that piece of art, you sprayed onto canvas, etc., and then photographed that. Yeah, and then he drew the other bits, and you put it all together digitally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
That's really quite interesting. There you go.
Yeah.
that's how that came together. And this album it's out now.
Yes.
And available where? Where can people get?
It's now available only as a digital listen. You can buy it obviously if you want to support us from our Bandcamp page, but it's on Spotify and Apple Music. Yeah, but I know. I mean, I'll tell you why in a short while. but it's in Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer. I don't know if it's in Tidal. I don't know, and like much of that stuff are what's that called? Distribution companies doing. But we are creating a physical both formats on both on CD and on vinyl. And that's why you might want to buy the digital album. Nobody wants MP3s, but I know. But we are anyway doing the physical formats, and it's going to be very good. But the CD, the vinyl is going to take some time. It's the vinyl presses there's huge queues. It might take half a year or something. We don't even know.
Which is good news in a way. It's good news. Yeah, but bad news at the same time. They need to make more.
I know.
They need to make more vinyl pressing outlets.
I wasn't too. Sorry. I wasn't too keen on making a CD originally, but then I got some people asking me about that, and then it doesn't really cost that much to do like a proper good-looking CD nowadays. So we'll do a small printing of that, and then the rest will be on vinyl. But you can listen to it digitally on like probably a streaming platform of choice.
There you go. But don't do that. Go and support it on Bandcamp, because that would be good. Yeah, and
I support that.
Absolutely. And when will there be a pre-order at some point for the vinyl? Are you going to do it as a pre-order?
There will. Yes, there will, and that will be probably during the couple of first weeks of June.
Yeah,
I'm not entirely certain on that yet, but this week we're kind of working it out, so it should be around that time. Before July, at any rate, because I really, really, really hope that we will get the vinyl this year.
Well, there you go. So listen, people, if you like your prog music, and you will like this, I assure you, do go and support this on Bandcamp. What is your Bandcamp address? Is it Pennies by the Pound?
It's penniesbythepound.bandcamp.com.
That's it. It's not Selling England by the Pound. It's Pennies by the Pound. Yeah. Right? Don't get confused.
You're not the first to take that reference.
So don't get confused. Go to Pennies by the Pound on Bandcamp. Listen to it first. Download it, and then go and buy it again in June or July when the pre-order happens. And that will make Johan and the rest of his band very, very happy. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you very much. And
thank you very much to you.
And I'll watch out. And I'll watch out for that vinyl when it gets released. Okay, sure. Thanks for joining me.
It's been a pleasure. And have a good afternoon, night, or whatever.
Cheers. Afternoon. Okay, bye for now.
Bye-bye.